what's up? Sanisa Super Bad Estrada here, and I just want to give a huge special shout out to the relay. Thank you so much for all of the continuous support, and thank you for all of the support during and after and before every single fight.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, on June 25th, at the end of this month, Taylor Robertson, sports professional record of 2-0, very promising young fighter out of Australia, who we've talked about here on the channel, is going to be taking on Kaylee Ryan, a kickboxer transitioning into boxing, making her professional debut against Taylor. And I'm not critical of the matchup, I'm not, because both of these professional boxers are in very similar places in their careers. Taylor sports a professional record of 2 wins and no losses, whereas Kaylee is in her professional debut. We'll say that both fighters come from combat backgrounds. Taylor has a solid amateur background, and Kaylee's a kickboxer transitioning into boxing, so she's not completely out of her depth. If you want my honest opinion, I like Taylor Robertson for the fight. I think she exhibits a lot of promise, shows a high ceiling. This is going to be a bantamweight contest for the vacant Australian female bantamweight title. I mean, it's just the beginning. Taylor is just now dipping her toe in the pool of professional boxing. She debuted last year, had 1 fight this year. This will be the 2nd fight she's had in 2021. Her 3rd fight as a professional boxer overall, and she's just dipping her toe in the pool before she officially gets her sea legs in the bantamweight division. No complaints. Something to watch out for towards the end of this month, and I reiterate, I like Taylor Robertson for the fight on points. In featherweight news, super featherweight I should say, Amanda Serrano was basically asked if she had any interest in participating what will be the 3rd season of the World Boxing Super Series, and in so many words, she said, "I'm committed to other things," which comes as no surprise to me. I mean, there is talk of Kale Sorland, Nisei Sorland, the event's orchestrators, pulling names from not only 130 pounds, but perhaps 1 or 2 from 126, where Amanda is the current reigning unified champion.
There's talk.
But I was never expecting Amanda to participate in this tournament.
No.
It seems that time has proven me right. In so many words, she says, "I'm not entertaining no tournament. My entire team is set on our goals. It's not my division, so it doesn't matter who's in it. Hopefully, it's the top names, though. That would be cool."
Yeah, it would also be very risky.
Amanda Serrano is currently in the process of unifying the featherweight division, and there are some very solid fighters there, though, comparatively, the super featherweight division, 130 pounds, it is a much deeper division than 126 because there's that many more girls to worry about. I mean, it's not just the champions you have to look out for. It's not just Terry Harper, Hyun Mi Choi, Michaela Mayer, and Maiva Hamadouche. You have to worry about Tiaria Brown. You have to worry about Alicia Baumgartner. You have to worry about Sofia Ochagava, Firuza Sharapova. You have to worry about Natasha Jonas, Alem Mekhaled. You got to worry about a lot of girls at that weight.
It is risky.
If you want my opinion, and you're here, so I'll assume that you do, Amanda Serrano, comparatively, would face less resistance attempting to unify the featherweight division than attempting to do so in the super featherweight division because the competition's a lot stiffer and that much more plentiful. Right now, Amanda Serrano is just 2 fights away, just 2 fights from becoming the featherweight division's undisputed champion. That's where she is.
Right now.
If she were to try to go up to 130 and do the same thing, she'd be starting all over. And it would be that much more difficult to do at 130 pounds as opposed to 126 because there's more girls to go through. And if I'm being honest, those girls are a lot more dangerous than anything you'll find at 126 pounds. And that's nothing against Erica Cruz or Sarah Mahfoud or Jelena Marjanovic before her. But when you compare the threat level of those opponents as opposed to what Amanda would find at 130 pounds, I can tell you right now, Maiva Hamadouche is a much more dangerous opponent, a much more dangerous fight than all 3 of those girls put together. You could give Amanda very good odds to beat Erica Cruz and Sarah Mahfoud, and you could have given her good odds to beat Jelena had that fight took place, had that fight happened. Whereas with Maiva Hamadouche, it's a different ballgame. It's a whole different story. And that's just one of the champions she'd face at 130 pounds. There's still Terry Harper, Michaela Mayer, and Hyun Mi Choi. That being said, I'm not expecting Amanda Serrano to shift her focus to participating in this tournament, although there might be a big cash prize at the end of it. But I don't expect Amanda Serrano to take that into consideration, as there was a big cash prize involved in the Katie Taylor fight.
She already walked away from that.
I'd wager what she stood to make in that Katie Taylor fight likely far exceeds what she's made since she walked away from that Katie Taylor fight. What she made with Diana Santana, what she made with Daniela Bermudez, and what she just made over there in that MMA circuit, Icon Fights. I'd wager that she could have fought Katie Taylor once and made more money than what she just made participating in all that other stuff. So with those things in mind, I'm not the least bit surprised to hear that Amanda has no interest in participating in the World Boxing Super Series. And it's the funniest thing, because participating in the series, if and when it kicks off, would give Amanda more of a profile boost than unifying the featherweight division. But, it is what it is.
I was never expecting her to join.
It's too risky. Short of a title going vacant at 130 pounds, I don't see Amanda Serrano campaigning there in the near future.
I wasn't in camp when it all went on. I was in Miami with my family, actually, enjoying life. So I always said, like, in a lot of interviews, like, don't, I could fight Deontay Wilder next. Don't write that off. There was always an arbitration court thing going on with the fight, and everyone knew about it. So it was what it was. The judge found it fit to extend their contract when it was over, and that was it. So we're in this position. Am I bothered? Not really. Is it a good blessing in disguise? Probably. Everything happens for a reason, and I've been believing that all my whole life. So I'm after being inclined to believe it today as well.
So you go in, you do a number against Wilder. Presumably, you beat Wilder, and you still want to fight Joshua and unify and become undisputed champion.
Like I said to you many times, the undisputed and unifying job, it's all me. I'm not interested. Whoever the fights are, who's there available to fight, we fight. As for like undisputed and unified, I've done all that. I've done unification with Klitschko, won all the belts before, 2-time world champion without being beat. I could just rattle on about what I've done for the next 2 hours. But we already know what I've done. We already know who I am. Boxing's boxing. Wherever I fight, I fight. That's it. No matter if I fight a guy who's absolutely rubbish or I fight the best guy in the world, I still train hard, I still dedicate, still sacrifice to it. You'll never catch Tyson Fury on the off, ever. Because I know you never underestimate the underdog, because I've been the underdog every single time, in every single fight I've ever had.
The inference you can make based on Tyson Fury's comments to Gareth Davies is that he doesn't place that much emphasis on the undisputed title fight with Anthony Joshua. In so many words, he calls it bullshit. And I guess the reasoning he's giving is because he's already held all the belts. Bear in mind, he's never held them all at the same time. His reign as a unified champion didn't consist of very many, if any, title defenses. After becoming unified champion, having beaten Vladimir Klitschko, he subsequently retired. His reign as a unified champion was a short-lived reign. Goes away for a while, comes back, fights Wilder 2 times, officially beats him in the rematch. This is actually going to be Tyson Fury's first defense of a heavyweight title. In some circles, a champion is not legitimized as a champion until he has to defend his crown. Tyson Fury, he's never defended an alphabet title. Now, if you guys want to consider the Sefer Seferi and Francesco Pianetta fights, the Tom Schwartz and the Otto Wallin fights as defenses of the lineal title, well, that's another conversation entirely, because some people, they don't view Tyson Fury as lineal heavyweight champion. They think his reign as lineal champion ended after the first Klitschko fight, when he retired. The rule of thumb when it comes to lineal champions is that there's only a few ways you can lose it. The most obvious way is in the ring. The second way would be to die as lineal champion. And the third way to lose it is to retire, which Tyson Fury briefly did for a time. After the Klitschko fight, he went away for something like 2 years. So to some people, Tyson Fury isn't actually this division's lineal heavyweight champion. He's not, to some people. I've seen that conversation had many times, though. The subject here is how Tyson Fury does not place the emphasis on becoming this division's undisputed champion that Anthony Joshua does. He doesn't place the same emphasis on that that Joshua does, yet Tyson Fury's the one saying that AJ's a businessman.
Oh?
Listen, if AJ's a businessman, he doesn't need to fight you or the winner of your fight with Deontay Wilder. I mean, if he's just a businessman, he can make more money than the both of yous, satisfying his mandatory challengers, if he were just a businessman. If he were just a businessman, his promoter, him, they would have never sought you out. They would have stayed away from you.
They didn't.
But right after he defended his title against his mandatory challenger, Kubrat Pulev, they went right into negotiations with you after you called them out. It never ends with Tyson Fury. There is absolutely no accountability whatsoever. If he's just a businessman, he doesn't need to go looking for you.
But he did.
He can make comparable money to you not fighting you. And if you don't care about the belts, and you don't care about the alphabets and becoming an undisputed champion, if you won't stand for ceremony,
No.
why were you trying to fight Anthony Joshua?
Were you?
Since becoming undisputed isn't all that important and it's all bullshit. I mean, why were you going to fight that guy? I know why you were going to fight that guy. Because of the money. Because of the money associated with the fight. You would have made 2 times, maybe even 3 times as much money fighting Anthony Joshua than what you would have made fighting Deontay Wilder. That's if you actually had any intention of fighting him.
Did you?
There's a Freudian slip here that I think requires some attention. Tyson Fury said that he wasn't actually training. He wasn't actually training when he was, out there waiting for the arbitrator's ruling. He was in Miami with his family. He's just having fun and living life. So you weren't training for the Joshua fight. Why wouldn't you be training for the Joshua fight if that's what you and your team were going to do? Why wouldn't you have been training?
Yeah.
Is it because you never expected to have the fight? Is it because you knew, in spite of Eddie Hearn's efforts, you knew it wouldn't happen? You knew that you were going to fight Wilder for a 3rd time? Is that why you weren't training? Because Tyson Fury says it in plain English. When he was out there, leading up to the arbitrator's ruling, he wasn't training. He was in Miami, enjoying life and enjoying his family.
Okay.
Saw that when he was over there in Las Vegas with Sugar Hill Stewart. He's just having himself a good time, and I'm not against him having a good time. I'm just saying that if you didn't think enough of what was going on to start training for the Joshua fight, why would that be? Could it be because you never expected to fight him? Because you knew that you wouldn't?
Let's recap.
So becoming undisputed champion at this point doesn't mean anything to Tyson Fury. He doesn't care about that. He won't stand for ceremony. At this point, that's all bullshit. Doesn't mean much to him. Leading up to the arbitrator's ruling, he wasn't actually training for the Joshua fight. He wasn't actually preparing for that. He was having fun in Las Vegas and having fun in Miami. But what he wasn't doing was preparing for the Anthony Joshua fight. Ladies and gentlemen, do you get the impression that Tyson Fury knew he wasn't going to fight Joshua in spite of what the boxing community was led to believe? Do you get the sense that when Fury says he doesn't care about Undisputed and he wasn't actually preparing for the Joshua fight, do you get the sense that he might have known it wasn't going to happen?
Huh?
Even though he himself called out Joshua late last year after the Pulev fight, even though he himself confirmed the day before the arbitrator's ruling that the fight was on and all systems were a go after he got off the phone with the prince over there in Saudi Arabia. Do you get the impression that Tyson Fury wanted people to believe one thing while he himself knew something else, was working on something else?
Then why call out Anthony Joshua?
Why direct your social media posts at him and how you're going to smash him and crush him? Why confirm the day before the arbitrator's ruling that the fight was on? If you knew the whole time that the fight wasn't going to happen, so much so that you weren't even training for the fucking fight, you knew all this stuff, what were you doing calling that guy out?
That doesn't seem like a very Spartan thing to do.
You're calling out a guy you know you're not going to fight because of how big a Spartan you are? Seems to me like Tyson Fury's more the businessman than Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua doesn't need to go undisputed. He wants to.
And it sounds a lot like you don't.
Mr. Spartan. And finally, Jermall Charlo, reigning WBC middleweight champion, had this to say ahead of his fight this weekend. Jermall Charlo will just continue to fight fights like these if he can't get Canelo, Triple G, and others. And who are these others? He's quoted as saying, apparently, the things that I want next, I don't never get, Charlo said during a virtual press conference recently. So, I just want to be safe. I want to be happy. I want to take care of my family. I put my life on the line. If they give me Canelo, I'll go get Canelo. If they give me Golovkin, I'll go get Golovkin. Danny Jacobs, Andre, whoever they want. Whoever they want Jermall Charlo to fight. Right now, I got Juan Montiel, you know, and he thinks he's going to knock me out. So he just lit the birthday cake for himself. Regardless, if Charlo cannot secure any of the fights he mentioned, it won't necessarily accelerate his move from the 160-pound limit to the 168-pound division. Nah, I'll just continue to fight fights like these, Charlo said, until the guys realize, you know, that somebody got to try and get this WBC belt one day or another. I mean, I'm comfortable here at 160, Charlo said. I'm the king at 160, man. Sky's the limit. I'll go up, of course, you know, I'll go up for the bigger fights, but the bigger fights gotta come to me, you know? They gotta want to fight me, so I can't make them get in the ring with me. It's nothing I can do about that, and that's just a lot of bullshit, alright? That's a very minimalist approach to what is a growing problem for Jermall Charlo. This weekend, he's fighting this no-name guy,
Montiel,
whose claim to fame is a very past-it James Kirkland. I don't think this fight's going to do very good viewership because it's got to compete with two other cards this weekend. I mean, even though Lopez versus Kambosos has been pushed out to August, there are still 3 cards happening at the same time, and this card is happening on a premium cable network, Charlo versus Montiel. This is the card that is least likely to garner a lot of viewership because it's on a premium cable network, and the views, the TV ratings coming from Showtime's fights as of late, they haven't been encouraging. You tell yourself that Nielsen Media and TV Research, they don't release the numbers for the streaming app. They only release the numbers for the conventional channel. But the same is true for Top Rank and the cards they stage on ESPN. Ultimately, abysmal viewership is abysmal viewership, and that's what Showtime has been getting as of late with their cards, for better or worse. Abysmal viewership. How many people do you actually think are interested in seeing Charlo versus Montiel? And if his solution is to play the waiting game, that, you know, unless it's Canelo, unless it's Gennady Golovkin, he's just going to keep fighting fights like these. Okay, you can do that if that's what you want to do. But one, don't expect anybody to feel sorry for you. Don't expect anybody to shake their fist at the sky about how Canelo Alvarez needs to fight you when you're fighting in fights like these. That's the first thing. The second thing is you're not the king of the middleweight division. A lot of people still view Gennady Golovkin as the guy to beat at 160 pounds, not you. Hell, Ryota Murata's worth more money than you are, and he puts up way better viewing figures with the same quality of competition. That's the second thing. The third thing is you're moving backwards. You went from participating in a doubleheader with your brother last year, and now you're back on regular Showtime. That fight last year, that was a pay-per-view, whereas this is on regular Showtime. So as far as progress goes, you're not making any. You're moving backwards. And if your solution is to continue fighting in fights like these, you'll continue to move backwards.
so don't expect us to feel sorry for you.
Go on and keep fighting in fights like those and see who gives a rat's furry fucking ass.